Imagine for a vivid moment your life, with all its nuances, joys, and aspirations in full bloom. You live in a city where the sun kisses the hills and the sea whispers ancient secrets, where the laughter of children echoes through stone streets, where the hum of commerce and the aroma of warm bread mingle in the vibrant air of every morning. Your days are filled with promises, your nights with delights, and the future seems as certain and unshakable as the mountains surrounding your home. Prosperity permeates every aspect of existence, from the sumptuous banquets of wealthy patricians to the arduous yet rewarding labor of artisans. The city pulsates with life, with the unshakable confidence of a civilization at the peak of its power. But what if you were told that in the blink of an eye, without any real warning or time to comprehend the terror approaching, all of this would be brutally annihilated, that the very earth, which once nourished and protected, would turn against you with unimaginable fury? This isn't an ancient fable or the plot of a Greek tragedy. This is the visceral, chilling, and still incredibly present story of Pompeii, a silent yet eloquent testament to the overwhelming force of nature and the intrinsic fragility of human existence. The city didn't just disappear, it was perfectly sealed, mummified by a shroud of volcanic ash, preserving for posterity the last breath of a world that refused to be forgotten. Centuries would pass, and the memory of Pompeii would fade into a distant legend, a whisper from the past, until the picks of archaeologists and human curiosity brought it back to light. Unearthing it, they found not just ruins but a snapshot frozen in time, an open-air museum where Roman life was interrupted at its peak. What secrets did this time capsule hold? What truly happened on that fateful day in August of 79 AD, when the mountain that promised life delivered death? And most importantly, what does this monumental catastrophe, this end of a miniature world, still teach us about ourselves, about our own relationship with nature, with life, and with the inevitability of its end? Prepare for a deep dive, as we are about to unravel the mysteries of a metropolis that was swallowed by the fury of a sleeping god, but which, paradoxically, was reborn to tell us one of history's greatest sagas. If this promise has hooked you, if you're ready to unravel the mysteries of Pompeii, go ahead and hit that like button on this video and share it with anyone who, like you, loves a good story that grips you from beginning to end. And of course, to not miss any of our upcoming dives into the past, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. It's your way of helping us spread knowledge and truth about the events that shaped the world. Oh, and tell me in the comments, from what corner of the globe are you joining this exploration? The morning of August 24th, 79 AD, gave no hint of the Armageddon that was approaching. For the inhabitants of Pompeii, the Mediterranean sun, already warming the slopes of Mount Vesuvius, was a constant blessing, a reminder of the mild climate and the fertility that the Campania region offered. They lived under the shadow of a mountain they considered harmless, a sleeping giant that, in their eyes, was merely a beautiful landscape, a familiar landmark on the horizon. No one could even imagine that, beneath its seemingly placid surface, the most brutal geological forces were stirring, a cauldron of magma and gases bubbling, about to explode in an infernal fury. It was a sinister prelude for which the humanity of that era lacked the knowledge to decipher. In the streets of Pompeii, life unfolded at its customary, comforting pace. Bakeries, with their ovens already hot, exuded the inviting aroma of freshly baked bread, drawing the day's first customers, some of them slaves sent by their masters to fetch breakfast. The gates of the domus, the Roman houses, were open, revealing inner courtyards decorated with vibrant frescoes and gardens that exuded the scent of flowers. In the tabernae, types of bars and diners, the first patrons were already savoring their morning diluted wine, discussing the day's business or betting on cockfights. Women, many accompanied by their slaves, headed to the markets, the Macellum, to select the best produce, planning meals, and exchanging the latest city gossip. Children, in their innocence, ran and played on the stone sidewalks, their laughter echoing among the buildings, oblivious to the impending catastrophe. Slaves tirelessly began their household chores, while merchants arranged their stalls with colorful goods for another day of sales and haggling. It was a vivid portrait of a normal life, of a prosperity that seemed eternal, of a routine that unfolded with the predictability of the sun rising and setting. The truth is that small earthquakes had shaken the region in the days and weeks leading up to the eruption, and more significantly after the Great Earthquake of 62 AD, which caused considerable damage. But these tremors were so common in Campania, a seismic region by nature, that they were ignored, regarded as mere whims of the earth, or perhaps in the minds of some more superstitious individuals, as slight signs of irritation from a minor god. Nothing that could shake the confidence of a civilization that saw itself at the peak of its power and dominance. Little did they know that each of these tremors was a warning, a sinister creak from the tomb that was about to open beneath their feet, a harbinger of the apocalypse that would unfold in the coming hours. The normalcy of that morning would be the last breath of a life that would be frozen in time, an epic tragedy that would mark history forever. Nestled in an enviable location, tucked into the fertile and luxuriant Campania region, and bathed by the blue waters of the Bay of Naples, Pompeii was more than just a city. It was a diamond set in the crown of the Roman Empire, a vibrant symbol of opulence, leisure, and the unmistakable Roman lifestyle. Its prosperity was not a matter of chance, but the confluence of geographical and economic factors. Its citizens, many of them prosperous merchants and shrewd landowners, enjoyed an enviable wealth, largely derived from lucrative maritime trade and abundant agricultural production. The volcanic soil, ironically, guaranteed bountiful harvests, especially of fine wines and high-quality olive oils, which were exported in sealed amphorae to the four corners of the vast empire, reaching even distant provinces. Pompeii was, par excellence, a center of leisure and ostentation, a coveted destination for the Roman elite. Patricians from Rome built their lavish seaside villas there, escaping the bustle and intrigues of the capital to enjoy the natural beauty, mild climate, and more relaxed pace of life. The city's streets buzzed with palpable energy, the murmur of merchants coming and going from distant lands, bringing exotic goods and tales from far-off kingdoms, the rhythmic sound of artisans in their busy workshops, displaying skills passed down through generations, and the carefree laughter of citizens enjoying the countless pleasures that urban life offered. The city was a masterpiece of Roman engineering, equipped with every convenience that Pax Romana could provide. A complex system of aqueducts brought fresh water from the mountains, supplying ornamental fountains that spouted everywhere, the luxurious public baths where both body and mind were exercised, and even some of the wealthiest homes. Public life was celebrated in grand amphitheaters, where the roars of the crowd mingled with the clang of swords, and in more intimate theaters, where comedies and tragedies, inspired by Greek and Roman classics, entertained everyone. The Forum, the pulsating heart of Pompeii's civic, religious, and commercial life, was the epicenter where decisions were made, business conducted, and gods honored. The natural beauty of the bay, combined with the imposing architecture and inviting climate, transformed Pompeii into a true earthly paradise, a place where prosperity flourished and life seemed to be a continuous, endless celebration. Yet behind all this magnificence there was a secret, an ancient whisper about Vesuvius, which, though dormant for centuries, had already demonstrated its power in the distant past, long before the Romans even existed. These rumors, lost in the mists of time and myth, were not enough to shake the confidence of a population that had tamed the land and believed it commanded the world. They did not know that the mountain adorning their horizon was merely waiting for the opportune moment to rewrite their city's history. The inhabitants of Pompeii were not a homogeneous mass, but rather a vibrant microcosm of Roman society, a complex and intricate mosaic of different social classes, professions, origins, and aspirations. At the apex of this intricate social pyramid shone the wealthy merchants and powerful landowners, the elite who dictated the rules and enjoyed a life of opulence. Many of them were liberti, former slaves who, through their shrewdness and hard work, accumulated colossal fortunes, ascending socially and displaying their newly acquired status with unprecedented grandeur. Their villas, scattered both in the urban area and on the picturesque slopes descending to the sea, were true urban palaces, filled with Greek and Roman artworks, marble statues, lush gardens with murmuring fountains, and hundreds of slaves to cater to every whim. These domus were not just dwellings, they were declarations of power and influence, stages for sumptuous banquets and political gatherings. Below this elite, Pompeii's middle class formed the city's backbone. It was composed of a myriad of skilled artisans, whose workshops and shops lined the bustling streets, forming a labyrinth of smells, sounds, and colors. There were the bakers, whose steaming ovens exuded the inviting aroma of fresh bread throughout the neighborhood. The potters, who molded clay into vases and amphorae for wine and oil. The weavers, who created fine fabrics for Roman garments. And the goldsmiths, who transformed precious metals into delicate jewelry and ornaments for the wealthy. Beyond them were the liberal professionals, such as physicians who treated bodily ailments, lawyers who pleaded cases in the forum, and teachers who instructed the next generation of citizens. Each contributed to the intellectual, cultural, and economic life of Pompeii, ensuring its harmonious functioning. At the base of society, the vast population of slaves played a fundamental role in virtually every sphere of life. Their lives, though often brutal and without freedom, were an intrinsic part of the city's operation. They worked in homes, on agricultural fields, in mines, in workshops, and more dramatically, in gladiatorial arenas. Their routines were dictated by their masters, but many dreamed of manumissio, freedom, a reward that some, as seen by the wealthy freedmen, managed to achieve. And of course, the gladiators, enigmatic figures, simultaneously heroic and tragic, who risked their lives in the life-or-death spectacles of the amphitheater, fascinating and terrifying the crowd with their strength and courage. Every Pompeian, from the humblest slave to the most influential local senator, was a vital piece in the city's complex social tapestry, each with their ambitions, their deepest fears, and their most secret hopes. Their stories, now silent beneath layers of ash, are written on the stones, in the frescoes, and on the objects they left behind, a vivid reminder of the diversity of lives abruptly cut short by a force that even omnipotent Rome could not control. Pompeii's architecture was far more than the simple functionality of structures. It was a grand declaration, a tangible expression of its inhabitants' wealth, power, and undeniable good taste, a true ode to Roman magnificence. Private homes, ranging from the most modest dwellings with 1 or 2 rooms to the opulent and sprawling villas of the patricians, followed a construction pattern that prioritized not only family privacy, but also aesthetic beauty and ostentation. Most of these residences were designed around an atrium, an open-air central courtyard that functioned as the pulsating heart of the home. In this space, rainwater was cleverly collected in an impluvium, a shallow rectangular basin, and then directed into a cistern, ensuring household water supply. The atrium was not merely a functional element. It was a space where families gathered for meals, morning prayers, and social meetings, and where clients and visitors were received. Beyond the atrium, many Pompeian houses, especially the larger and more luxurious ones, featured a peristyle, a majestic inner garden encircled by a colonnade, which served as a tranquil retreat and an elegant space for leisure and social gatherings. These gardens were meticulously maintained and frequently adorned with statues of gods and heroes, murmuring fountains that created a relaxing ambiance, and detailed frescoes that transformed the walls into true open-air art galleries. The sound of running water and the scent of exotic flowers filled the air, creating a private paradise within the city walls. But Pompeii's grandeur was not limited to private residences. Its public buildings were equally imposing and reflected the city's strategic and cultural importance in the Roman Empire. The Forum, the civic, religious, and commercial epicenter of Pompeii, was a vast rectangular space, paved with stones and surrounded by majestic columns. There, citizens gathered to discuss the politics of the res publica, conduct business, and participate in important religious ceremonies. In the Forum stood the majestic Temple of Jupiter, the city's main place of worship, whose imposing Corinthian columns dominated the landscape, a symbol of divine and imperial power. The Basilica, an impressive multi-naved building that served as both a courthouse and a center for commercial transactions. And the Macellum, the food market, which buzzed with life, the smell of spices, and the hum of negotiations. Other notable structures included the amphitheater, one of the earliest stone constructions of its kind, where crowds vibrated with gladiatorial combats, the Grand Theater, which could accommodate thousands of spectators for plays and musical performances, and the numerous public baths which were centers of social life and hygiene. Each of these buildings was not merely a utilitarian structure, it was a sanctuary of status and power, designed to impress and to celebrate the glory and organization of Rome, a legacy in stone that, by an irony of fate, was preserved in its perfection by its own destruction. The echo of voices, footsteps, and festivities that once filled these spaces still seems to linger in the air, inviting us to feel the pulse of a city that refused to be forgotten. The walls of Pompeii harbored an invaluable artistic treasure, an explosion of colors, forms, and narratives that, millennia later, transports us directly into the minds, souls, and dreams of its inhabitants. More than mere ornamental decorations, the frescoes and mosaics that profusely adorned private homes, sumptuous villas, and public buildings were authentic windows into the Roman world, revealing not only the aesthetics of the era, but also telling stories, unraveling myths, and depicting daily life with surprising vividness that defies the passage of time. The frescoes, painted directly onto the wet plaster of the walls, allowed pigments to fuse with the surface, ensuring impressive durability. They displayed a vast range of themes, from grand mythological scenes, where gods and heroes came alive in vibrant colors, to idyllic landscapes that sought to recreate the beauty of nature in urban environments. We could see Venus, the patron goddess of Pompeii, emerging from the sea foam with divine grace, or Hercules in one of his 12 labors, displaying his superhuman strength. But Pompeian art also turned to the prosaic, with vibrant still lifes that captured the beauty of fruits and foods, and realistic portraits of ordinary people, like a baker and his wife, with gazes that seemed to meet ours across the centuries. Every brushstroke revealed the unquestionable mastery of Pompeian artists, who excelled in perspective, composition, and the representation of the human figure with remarkable precision, often employing shading and lighting techniques that appear surprisingly modern. The mosaics, in turn, were intricate works of art, true puzzles composed of thousands of small colored stones, or tesserae, forming complex geometric patterns, figurative panels, and spectacular scenes. There were epic mosaics depicting grand battles, such as the Battle of Issus, where Alexander the Great confronted Darius III of Persia, or detailed marine landscapes with fish, dolphins, and mythological creatures that seemed to swim in an endless blue. In a touch of humor and realism, some mosaics portrayed everyday scenes, like a guard dog in front of a door, with the inscription, "Cave Canem, beware of the dog," a warning that still amuses visitors today. This art was not merely for gallery contemplation, it was an integral part of daily life, adorning every room, every wall, every floor, reflecting the tastes, beliefs, humor, and aspirations of the Pompeians. They preserved Roman aesthetics in their purest form, revealing a passion for heroic figures, a deep reverence for the gods, an appreciation for bucolic life, and an admiration for beauty in its diverse forms. Every fresco, every mosaic is a fragment of a lost world, a vivid memory that, miraculously, managed to survive the indomitable fury of Vesuvius, becoming an eternal testament to human creativity and the soul of a city that, even annihilated, refuses to be silenced. If we could, for a brief and magical instant, cross the veil of time and mingle with the effervescent crowd in the streets of Pompeii, we would immediately be enveloped by an unforgettable symphony of sounds, smells, and sights that would paint a vivid picture of a day in Roman life. The Pompeians' routine invariably began early, dictated by the first rays of sun peeking over the majestic silhouette of Vesuvius, painting the terracotta roofs of the houses golden and awakening the city. The humblest residents, the plebeians and slaves, would already be on their way to the public fountains, the fontes balneares, with their amphorae and buckets, to fetch fresh water that would supply their homes, while the wealthier had the comfort of their slaves performing these tasks, or the convenience of piped water in their residences. Breakfast, known as ientaculum, was a light and practical meal, often consisting of stale bread, cheese, some fresh seasonal fruits, and, for the more privileged, a little honey or olives. Soon after, public life and social activities took over the city with a growing buzz. In the Forum, Pompeii's pulsating heart, citizens gathered to discuss the day's politics, listen to magistrates' speeches, close important deals, and witness trials held in the basilica. Children, depending on their social class and their parents' wishes, went to schools, the ludi literarii, where they learned to read, write on wax tablets, and calculate using abacuses, or accompanied their parents in their daily work. The artisans' workshops opened, and the sound of hammers striking metal, the smell of leather, the clinking of potters' tools, and the murmur of conversations filled the streets, indicating full economic activity. By midday, the sun's heat intensified, and public life slowed down, giving way to prandium, a more substantial lunch than breakfast. Many returned home for this meal, while others, especially workers and travelers, could eat at a thermopolium, a type of fast food eatery that served hot food and drink. The afternoon was often dedicated to leisure, and the preferred destination was the public baths, the thermae. There, they not only cleansed themselves but also socialized intensely, exercised in the palaestra, read in libraries, or simply relaxed in pools of different temperatures. As evening fell, families gathered for cena, the main meal of the day, which could be a sumptuous and prolonged banquet in the homes of the wealthy, with multiple courses and entertainment, or a simple and nutritious meal for the lower classes, consumed in more modest settings. The smell of olive oil, wine, spices, and herbs perfumed the air, creating a welcoming and familiar atmosphere. It was a life rhythmic with sunlight, hard work, and well-deserved leisure, a complex tapestry of habits, rituals, and social interactions that, for them, was the very essence of human existence. And in its apparent immutability, in this routine that seemed eternal, Pompeii carried the echoes of millennia of traditions and the promise of a future that, tragically, would never arrive. Roman cuisine in Pompeii, as in other cities of the empire, was a vivid reflection of the social hierarchy and the vast wealth that permeated the city. For the most affluent, food transcended mere necessity. It was an elaborate form of ostentation, a sensory pleasure, and a ritual of social interaction and status affirmation. Banquet after banquet, known as convivia, were organized in ornate dining rooms, the triclinia, where guests reclined on soft couches while slaves served a profusion of dishes. The tables were laden with exotic delicacies, many imported from distant lands, rare birds like peacocks and flamingos, fresh fish and seafood caught in the Bay of Naples, and game meats, seasonal vegetables and fresh fruits cultivated in the fertile volcanic soil complemented the meals. Dishes were often prepared with spices and seasonings imported from the East, such as pepper, cumin, and saffron, and enhanced by the ubiquitous garum, a fermented fish sauce with a strong umami flavor, which was added to almost everything. These banquets could last for hours, interspersed with lively conversations about philosophy, politics, and poetry, or by performances from musicians and dancers. Wine, served diluted with water to avoid intoxication and allow conversation to flow, was a constant presence, transported in elegant ceramic amphorae. For the wealthy, every meal was a performance, an act of displaying power and refinement, where both palate and intellect were equally satisfied. For the vast majority of the population, however, cuisine was simpler, yet nutritious and invariably flavorful. Bread was the unquestionable staple of the Pompeian diet, consumed with virtually every meal. Numerous bakeries were ubiquitous in the city, and archaeologists have found carbonized loaves that retained their shape and even the baker's marks, giving us a tangible glimpse of the food that sustained daily life. In the tabernae and thermopolia, which were the fast food eateries and the heart of the lower classes' social and culinary life, the buzz was constant. There, Pompeians could enjoy quick and affordable meals. Hearty stews, lentil dishes, fried fish, grilled sausages, and a variety of seasonal vegetables, all washed down with wine diluted in water. The smell of spices, garlic, olive oil, and wood smoke permeated the air, creating a vibrant, welcoming and democratic atmosphere where everyone could eat and socialize. This was the food that sustained the city, the energy that propelled its workers, and the joy that brought families and friends together after a day's work. The vestiges of these pleasures, from the intact loaves in their ovens to the amphorae of wine and the remains of meals in latrines, give us a vivid sample of daily life, the flavors and the eating habits of a world that vanished beneath the ashes, but which bequeathed to us a fascinating menu from the past. Life in Pompeii, far from monotonous, was an intricate tapestry of hard work and the celebration of leisure, where entertainment manifested across a spectrum ranging from brutally visceral to exquisitely intellectual. The amphitheater, an imposing structure and one of the earliest of its kind built of stone, capable of holding over 20,000 spectators, was the stage for the most bloody and, undeniably, most popular spectacles: gladiatorial combats. Crowds crammed into the stands, the air vibrating with anticipation, to witness the courage, skill, and often the inevitable death of these warriors. The roar of the crowd, the clang of swords, the growl of wild beasts, bears, lions, leopards, imported from distant lands for the Venation's staged hunts, and the cries of pain mingled in a cacophony that created an atmosphere of ecstasy, catharsis, and terror. It was a visceral spectacle that fed the people's passion for drama, heroism, and for some the morbid fascination with death in the arena. Life and death were decided by a simple gesture from the emperor or the organizer of the games, the editor Muneris, who could save or condemn a vanquished gladiator. However, Pompeian entertainment was not limited to the violence of the arenas. The Grand Theater, an elegant semicircular structure that could accommodate about 5,000 people, and the Odeon, or small theater, a more intimate and covered structure, were dedicated to the performing arts and music. There, comedies and tragedies, inspired by Greek and Roman classics, were staged, with actors wearing elaborate masks and costumes that helped define their roles. Music, dance, poetry recitals, and oratory also found their place on these stages, offering a more intellectual and sophisticated form of leisure. The people of Pompeii, from the humblest plebeian to the noblest patrician, sought in these performances an escape from reality, a connection with the epic narratives and human dramas that resonated in their own lives. And for relaxation and intense socialization, the public baths, the thermae, were the quintessential meeting point, much more than simple places of hygiene. They were true multifunctional centers of leisure, culture, and business. There was a ritualistic sequence of rooms: the apoditerium, changing room; the frigidarium, cold water pool; the tepidarium, warm and humid room; and the caldarium, hot steam room, almost a sauna. In addition to bathing facilities, the baths featured palestrae, courtyards for physical exercise, libraries where one could read scrolls, massage rooms, and even small shops. It was where Pompeians exercised, conducted business, relaxed, discussed politics, gossiped, and, in short, lived a significant part of their social lives. The murmurs of conversation, the bubbling of water, the scent of perfumed oils, and the ambient warmth filled the air, creating an atmosphere of well-being and camaraderie. These spaces of pleasure, spectacle, and leisure were an intrinsic part of Pompeian identity, revealing a society that knew how to balance hard work with the incessant pursuit of enjoyment and the cultivation of social relationships, elements that in some way survived the passage of time. Politics in Pompeii wasn't confined to the whispering halls of the powerful or the solemn debates in the forum. It lived and breathed in the city's very streets, carved, painted, and incised on the walls lining the thoroughfares, a public and fervent manifestation of citizens' ambitions and the people's passions. The electoral inscriptions, painted in vivid red or black on the facades of buildings, are a vibrant testament to this political effervescence. They were, essentially, the billboards and campaign slogans of their era, and they reveal much about Pompeian civic life, popular participation, and the dynamics of local power. The messages were direct and often very personal, with ordinary citizens supporting their favorite candidates with slogans like "Quintus Postumius is fit for aedile," I ask you to elect Julius Polybius as aedile. He brings good bread. Or Osimus for duovir. He is worthy. The election for local magistrates was an event of great importance. The aediles were responsible for maintaining urban infrastructure, such as markets, streets, and baths, as well as supervising public spectacles. The duoviri, in turn, were the city's chief magistrates, with broad judicial and administrative responsibilities. Their campaigns were intense, with candidates seeking the people's favor to ascend politically, and wealthier families often financed the costs of campaigns and games to gain popularity. Guilds of artisans, neighborhood associations, neighbors, and even brothel owners explicitly declared their support, showing the level of engagement of the population across different social strata. This form of street propaganda was democratic in its essence, allowing anyone to express their preference or even crack a joke. And indeed, not all inscriptions were formal endorsements. Some were more than just support. They were biting criticisms, obscene jokes, or even anonymous insults directed at public figures or rival candidates, revealing the sarcastic and at times vulgar streak of the populace. There are records of passionate declarations of love, laments of broken hearts, messages of friendship, and even everyday frustrations, such as "Caius hates being served by his slaves," or "Where did you go, my dear?" The walls of Pompeii were an uncensored forum of expression, a kind of ancient social media that allows us to hear the authentic voices of ordinary people. This open and direct political culture, etched in stone and plaster, offers a fascinating glimpse into a society where the voice of the people, or at least a significant part of it, could be heard and seen by all, unfiltered. And if this story surprised you, if it made you see the past in a new light, then hit that like button on this video right now. Subscribe to our channel and ring that bell so you don't miss any of our next historical sagas, which will take you down unimaginable paths of knowledge. Your interaction helps us spread these stories and expand our community of time explorers, uniting history lovers from all corners of the world. Go ahead and tell us in the comments, where are you watching this unforgettable journey through the past from? We want to know where our global tribe of history enthusiasts is tuning in from. Life in Pompeii was deeply and intrinsically intertwined with religion and superstition, a complex tapestry of rituals, beliefs, and myths that permeated every aspect of daily life, from sunrise to sunset. The Pompeians, like the vast majority of Romans, were staunch polytheists, worshipping a vast and multifaceted pantheon of gods and goddesses, both Roman and Greek, who were carefully syncretized to meet local needs. These deities exerted an omnipresent influence over all aspects of life, from the abundance of the harvest and success in war, through love and health, to the ultimate destiny and death. In the civic heart of the city, the Forum, the majestic temple of Jupiter, Venus, and Apollo, were the centers of public religious life, the converging points where the community gathered to honor the main state deities. There, animal sacrifices, offerings of fruits and grains were made on ornate altars, and religious festivals were celebrated with great pomp and ceremony. The air was often permeated by the smell of burning incense and the murmur of prayers. Venus, in particular, was considered the patron goddess of Pompeii, and her cult was extremely popular, with dedicated temples and festivals in her honor, reflecting the importance of love, beauty, and fertility in the city's life. Beyond the grand public temples, every Pompeian home possessed its own household altar, a small shrine known as a lararium, usually located in the atrium or peristyle of the house. These altars were dedicated to the lares, ancestral guardian deities of the family and home, the penates, household gods and gods of the pantry, ensuring an abundance of food, and the genius, the guardian spirit of the paterfamilias, the head of the household. Daily, simple offerings such as flowers, fruits, wine, and incense were made at these altars to ensure the protection, prosperity, and well-being of all household members. This practice demonstrated the deep connection between the public and private, between the sacred and the secular, which was so characteristic of Roman religion. Pompeians were also deeply superstitious, fervently believing in omens, auguries, and the influence of spirits, both good and evil, and demons. Amulets such as the fascinus, a phallic amulet, or the Eye of Horus, imported from Egypt, were used to ward off the evil eye and bad luck. Rituals and invocations were performed to ensure good fortune, success in business, and protection against illness. Oracles were consulted and dreams interpreted as messages from the gods. The omnipresence of the gods and the strong belief in their power shaped morality, customs, daily decisions, and even the city's architecture. This interconnection with the divine, manifested from the grandeur of temples to the intimacy of homes, reveals a society that constantly sought harmony with the spiritual world, hoping to secure its place in the cosmos and its earthly prosperity, unaware that Vesuvius itself was a sleeping god, ready to redefine their faith. Amidst the glittering prosperity, the effervescent public life, and the religious devotion of Pompeii, there existed a darker, yet equally intrinsic and revealing side of Roman society, the lupanar, or brothel. Far from being a completely taboo subject or strictly hidden in the shadows, prostitution was a recognized and regulated part of urban life, although those involved were often socially marginalized. The Pompeian lupanar, in particular, is one of the best preserved in the Roman world, and offers a rare and incredibly detailed glimpse into the intimate life and sexual customs of the era, challenging some of our modern conceptions. The building itself was relatively modest from the outside, discreet enough not to attract excessive attention, but once inside, the contrast was evident. It consisted of 2 floors, with small rooms on the ground and upper floors, each with a simple stone bed covered by a soft mattress. What made these spaces remarkable, and still surprises visitors today, were the explicit wall paintings that adorned the walls above the doorways of each room. These paintings, which depict various sexual acts, were more than mere decorations. For many scholars, they served as a visual menu for clients, indicating the specialties offered in each room, or perhaps as symbolic representations of the place's function. The style of these paintings is direct, and for the Romans of the time, they did not carry the moral weight we associate with them today. The existence and visibility of the lupanar, with its graphic frescoes and obscene graffiti on the exterior walls, which clearly indicated the nature of the place to passers-by, reveal a fascinating complexity in Roman morality. Although chastity and virtue were highly valued for married Roman women, especially those of high class, and marital fidelity was an ideal, male sexuality was viewed more permissively. Prostitution was tolerated, and to some extent accepted, as a way to satisfy the sexual desires of single and even married men, as long as it did not involve respectable Roman women. Prostitutes, often slaves or freed women, had an extremely low social status. They were considered infames, but they were part of the city's social machinery, providing a demanded service. The names of the prostitutes and the clients' comments, inscribed on the lupanar's walls, offer small windows into their lives and interactions. They allow us to see a side of Roman society that is often idealized or ignored. The lupanar, therefore, was not a secret. It was an aspect of urban life, a space where social and sexual boundaries became more fluid, where hierarchies were temporarily suspended in the name of pleasure. It invites us to reflect on the complexities and contradictions of Roman social norms, their taboos and their surprising openness, showing that, even in an ancient society, the nuances of private and public life were far more intricate and fascinating than one might imagine, and that the pursuit of pleasure was as old as civilization itself. The streets of Pompeii were far more than mere thoroughfares for traffic. They were the primary stage for daily life, the artery through which the city's life pulsed with inexhaustible energy. Made of polished volcanic basalt blocks, the main arteries, like the Via dell'Abbondanza, Street of Abundance, were wide enough to allow two-way traffic for carts and pedestrians. The deep ruts of cart wheels can still be seen today, furrowing the stone and telling the story of centuries of coming and going, of goods transported and lives intertwined. For pedestrians, the elevated sidewalks, which lined the streets, were a vital necessity, protecting them from garbage, animal waste, and rainwater that flowed freely down the street centers. These sidewalks, often decorated with mosaics or steps, show the care taken with urban infrastructure and the concern for citizens' comfort. At many strategic points, large stepping stones were placed across the streets, allowing pedestrians to cross from one side to the other without getting their feet wet during rainy periods or when the streets were being cleaned. These stones, arranged like a giant puzzle, not only served as elevated crossings, they also functioned, intentionally or not, as speed bumps for carts, forcing drivers to slow down and maneuver carefully to avoid collisions. It was an ingenious system of traffic control and sanitation for its time, revealing remarkable urban intelligence. But the secrets of Pompeii's streets were not limited to the surface. Beneath them ran an ingenious water supply system. Robust aqueducts brought fresh, crystal-clear water from the mountains, such as the Aqua Augusta, Sereno Aqueduct, to the city, distributing it through a complex network of lead pipes, a health issue perhaps not fully understood at the time, to the numerous public fountains, baths, and even some wealthier private homes. The fountains, which constantly flowed with fresh water into stone basins, were social gathering points, vital for refilling household water supplies and essential for the population's survival. There was also a sewage system, though less comprehensive than the water supply, which helped remove some waste. But street cleanliness still largely depended on rain and cleaning crews. The streets were also home to a vast range of sounds and smells: the creaking of cartwheels over the stones, the murmur of conversations and the voices of merchants, the cries of street vendors hawking their wares, the scent of fresh bread from bakeries, the aroma of incense from temples, and unfortunately the less pleasant odor of waste and refuse that occasionally accumulated. Every stone, every rut, every fountain, and every sidewalk tells a part of the story of what it was like to live, work, and interact in Pompeii of old, an urban system that for its time was remarkably advanced, vibrant, and, in a way, a work of Roman engineering art that today allows us to feel the pulse of a distant past. The streets of Pompeii were not mere thoroughfares. They were, in fact, a vast and dynamic open-air showroom, a continuous marketplace where commerce bustled and life unfolded in its most dynamic and essential form. The shops and workshops, or tabernae, were the true pulsating heart of the Pompeian economy, a vibrant testament to the industriousness, artisanal skill, and entrepreneurial spirit of its inhabitants. On almost every street and alley, building facades opened into small shops, usually with masonry counters that directly faced the street, where products were invitingly displayed and sold to passers-by. The design of these shops often allowed natural light and air to circulate freely, inviting customers to enter. There was an impressive diversity of establishments, from bakeries, pistrina, whose brick and stone ovens still today reveal the shapes of the loaves that were baked there, some even with the baker's marks imprinted to identify the product, exuding a ghostly aroma that takes us back in time, to textile shops, textrini and foloniki, where wool and linen clothes were sold and processed. The folones, launderers, dyers, were crucial to the textile industry, not only washing clothes, but also bleaching and coloring them with vibrant dyes. The potters' workshops, in turn, were essential, producing amphorae for storing and transporting wine and oil, as well as a vast range of ceramic utensils for daily use, from plates and bowls to oil lamps. Each type of artisan had their place and specialization. We could find blacksmiths, fabri ferrarii, forging metals for tools and weapons, the rhythmic sound of their hammers echoing through the streets. Shoemakers, suturis, stitched leather for sandals and shoes, while jewelers, orifices, created delicate adornments in gold, silver, and precious stones, displayed in small showcases. There were also wine shops, coponae, which sold wine in jugs, and thermopolia, which offered hot, quick meals. These workshops were not just production sites. They were also dynamic social spaces, where artisans worked alongside their apprentices, and where customers and passers-by stopped to observe the work, exchange conversations, and, of course, conduct business. The sound of hammers, the smell of materials, leather, wood, metal, the heat of the ovens, and the sight of manual labor were integral parts of Pompeian daily life. Excavations have revealed a vast array of tools and finished products, allowing us to reconstruct the complexity of Pompeii's artisanal production, showing how the city was a vibrant center of economic activity, where manual skill was valued, trade flowed incessantly, and the community's life was intrinsically linked to its ability to produce and trade, a world of work and prosperity that, in an instant, would be silenced. Pompeii's prosperity was not a mere accident, nor was it a divine blessing without effort. It was the direct result of a robust, diversified, and strategically located economy, driven by its privileged geographical position and the unquestionable richness of its natural resources. The city benefited enormously from the fertile Campania plain, a region blessed with incredibly rich volcanic soil, which, paradoxically, would ultimately be its ruin. This soil, enriched by previous eruptions, produced abundant and high-quality agricultural harvests, sustaining the city and generating surpluses for export. Wine was, without a doubt, the main engine and pillar of the Pompeian economy. The slopes of Vesuvius, which seemed to gently rise to the sky, were covered with extensive vineyards, and the wine produced there, with its characteristic flavor and reputation for excellence, was highly valued throughout the vast Roman Empire. It was exported in large quantities in ceramic amphorae, whose particular design and tituli picti, painted labels, allowed their origin to be identified. Traces of these amphorae are found in distant archaeological sites, from Gaul, modern France, to Britannia, modern UK, attesting to Pompeii's extensive trade network. The production of olives and consequent olive oil was also a significant industry, with olive oil being an essential product in the Roman diet, cuisine, personal hygiene, for bathing and massages, and even in religious rituals and lighting. In addition to agriculture, Pompeii's intense port activity, although the city did not possess a grand natural harbor like Ostia, was facilitated by its proximity to the Sarno River and to coves in the bay. The nearest port, possibly in Stabiae or an accessible river inlet, served as a vital center for the redistribution of goods. Through it, not only local products were exported, but also manufactured and exotic goods, originating from all parts of the Mediterranean, arrived in Pompeii. Fine ceramics from Gaul, spices from the East, textiles from Greece, and even marble for constructions. The artisanal industry, with its diverse workshops of bakers, potters, weavers, blacksmiths, and jewelers, contributed substantially to the city's wealth, producing a wide range of products for local consumption and export. Fish and seafood were abundant in the bay and constituted an important part of the local diet, in addition to being processed into garum, a valuable fermented fish sauce, which was a delicacy and a basic condiment in Roman cuisine. Pompeii was, in its essence, a vibrant center of commerce and production, where wealth flowed incessantly from the land and the sea, feeding a society that prospered, expanded, and delighted in its abundance, without foreseeing that the same generous nature that gave them so much would take everything from them in one of history's most spectacular and tragic events. But how could such a flourishing, self-assured city be swallowed so abruptly? And why were the signs ignored? Despite the image of unwavering prosperity and seemingly eternal stability that Pompeii projected to the Roman world, the earth beneath its feet was far from inactive. Campania, home to the imposing and scenic Vesuvius, was, and still is, by its very geological nature, a highly seismic region. Small earthquakes and tremors were so frequent that they almost became part of the local soundscape and tactile experience, a constant, yet ignored hum at the back of the collective consciousness. However, in the years preceding the great and catastrophic eruption of 79 AD, these tremors became notably more intense, more frequent, and more persistent, especially after the devastating earthquake of 62 AD, 17 years earlier. This specific event caused significant damage in Pompeii and neighboring towns, such as Herculaneum, with entire buildings shaken, columns collapsing, and deep cracks appearing in the walls of many domus and public buildings. The Pompeians, for the most part, reacted to these tremors with a mixture of resignation and resilience. Accustomed to these geological phenomena, they regarded them as mere nuisances, simple whims of a living earth that, though sometimes irritating, granted them the fertility of its volcanic soil. Instead of fleeing or seeking deeper explanations, the population undertook extensive and ambitious reconstruction efforts. Temples were restored, houses repaired, and life seemed to resume its normal course. This attitude demonstrated a remarkable capacity for recovery, but also a dangerous blindness to the true signs that nature was sending them. They did not associate these recurrent tremors with the nearby mountain, Vesuvius, which, to them, was a benevolent entity, a source of fertile soil and stunning landscapes, not a dormant volcano that, for centuries, had been silently accumulating forces for an awakening with unimaginable fury. The popular wisdom of the time, or the tragic lack thereof, dictated that these tremors were merely isolated geological manifestations, or perhaps, in the minds of some more devout, the expression of a temporary irritation from minor gods. There was no scientific understanding of volcanology, and the subtle, yet increasingly frequent warnings that nature sent them were systematically ignored or downplayed. Daily life continued without major interruptions. Religious festivities proceeded. Games in the amphitheater filled the air with shouts, and commerce in the streets buzzed as usual. The smell of sulfur that occasionally permeated the air, a classic sign of volcanic activity, was attributed to thermal springs or other natural emanations, and not to the awakening of a lethal volcanic force. History thus shows us that blind trust in routine, the mistaken interpretation of signs, and ignorance of hidden dangers can be as fatal as the disaster itself. In Pompeii, normalcy was a dangerous illusion, and the persistence of underground tremors and small signs in the air were, in fact, Vesuvius taking a deep breath, filling its lungs with fury, preparing for its final devastating scream. What began as an ordinary day, a Mediterranean summer day like so many others in vibrant, carefree Pompeii, would transform, within a matter of hours, into an apocalyptic nightmare of unimaginable proportions. Around midday on August 24, 79 AD, a deafening and cataclysmic roar tore through the blue sky of Campania, a primal growl that echoed for miles, from Pompeii to Misenum, shaking the very foundations of the earth, a sound that, to many, seemed to come directly from the depths of Tartarus. Vesuvius, the sleeping mountain that had peacefully adorned the Bay of Naples landscape for centuries, had finally awakened from its millennial slumber. From the crater, a colossal and terrifying column of smoke, incandescent ash, rock fragments, and pumice began to rise with astonishing speed, rapidly growing skyward to form the unmistakable and fearsome shape of a giant pine tree, a vivid and apocalyptic image described by Pliny the Younger, one of the few eyewitnesses who survived to record the events for posterity. The column, which would reach stratospheric altitudes, injected millions of tons of volcanic material into the atmosphere. Initially, the rain falling on the city consisted of pumice stones, porous and light lava fragments, yet sharp as glass. They began to cover the city like a massive, deadly snow, quickly accumulating in the streets and on rooftops. The accumulated weight of these stones and ash became unbearable for the fragile Roman structures, and many buildings, both homes and shops, began to collapse under the pressure, mercilessly crushing those who tried to take shelter inside. The sunlight, once so generous, was swallowed by a thick cloud of ash and volcanic dust, and the sky darkened to such an extent that daylight was replaced by a terrifying gloom, an almost total darkness in the middle of the afternoon, creating an oppressive and infernal atmosphere. The air, once light and fragrant, became dense and thick, suffocating, with a pungent, sulfurous smell of sulfur and volcanic dust that made every breath agonizingly difficult. Panic, which had been a seed of latent concern, blossomed into absolute despair. The comforting sounds of daily life were suddenly replaced by the clatter of falling stones, the groans of wooden and brick structures giving way under the weight, and the screams of terror and desperate prayers of the inhabitants, who ran aimlessly through the obscured streets, desperately trying to escape a disaster that few could fully comprehend. What they didn't know was that the first phase of the eruption, though already terrible in its magnitude, was merely a prelude to the final and more lethal catastrophe, a brutal warning of the pyroclastic inferno that was yet to come and would spare no one in its path. When the relentless rain of pumice stones and volcanic ash began to fall mercilessly upon Pompeii, panic swept through the city like an overwhelming and unstoppable wave. The daily buzz of a vibrant metropolis was suddenly replaced by a deafening cacophony of screams of terror, children's cries, and the chaotic noise of thousands of people desperately running through the narrow, slippery streets. Visibility was almost non-existent, with toxic smoke and volcanic dust obscuring the sun, to such an extent that day was transformed into a ghostly, suffocating night, where the light of torches and lamps was swallowed by the dense atmosphere. Many inhabitants, in a primal impulse of self-preservation, attempted to flee, frantically running towards the city gates or to the beaches, hoping to find some safety on the roads leading away from Vesuvius. Carts, horses, and people piled up in the streets, animals whinnying in fear, vehicles quickly getting stuck in the growing layers of pumice and ash, making a mass escape almost impossible. People stumbled and fell, their bodies rapidly covered by the gray, hot snow that never stopped falling, suffocating them slowly and terribly. Others, in a decision that would irreversibly seal their fates, sought refuge inside their own homes, in cellars, in tabernae, or in other enclosed spaces, mistakenly believing that the solid walls and roofs would protect them from the storm of rocks and ash. Little did they know that this decision, though instinctive and understandable, would condemn them. The sheer force of the wind and the accumulated weight of the pumice and ash were so intense that tiled and wooden roofs began to give way with a sinister crash, mercilessly crushing those inside, without even giving them a chance to escape. With each passing minute, the situation became more unbearable. Breathing grew agonizingly difficult due to the inhalation of volcanic particles. Eyes burned and respiratory tracts inflamed, and the air became completely unbreathable, with lethal concentrations of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide. For those who were still trapped, with no possibility of escape, water and food became scarce, and despair deepened with every terrifying moment. The scenes of chaos were indescribable and heartbreaking. Mothers clinging desperately to their children, trying to protect them with their own bodies. Families trying to stay together amidst the confusion and darkness, their faces and clothes covered in ash, and individuals fighting furiously for their own survival, climbing over rubble and running against the scorching wind. That day, which began with the promise of a new dawn, became a desperate race against time, where every second was a brutal battle for life, and where the last embrace was a forever goodbye, frozen to be discovered millennia later. Of all the revelations Pompeii has provided us, perhaps none is as viscerally impactful, as moving and as directly human as the discovery and ingenuity behind the plaster casts. It is crucial to understand that these are not petrified bodies, as many mistakenly imagine. The process is much more subtle and, in a way, poetic. The genius behind this technique belongs to the Italian archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli, who, in the mid-19th century, had a brilliant intuition. He observed that when the eruption's victims were brutally buried by fine, damp ash and pyroclastic material, their bodies decomposed over the centuries, but left behind a perfect void, a hollow and detailed cavity in the hardened layers of volcanic material. This cavity was, in fact, a natural mold of the body. Fiorelli, realizing this peculiarity, carefully decided to inject liquid plaster into these cavities. The plaster, upon filling the void, faithfully copied the exact shape of the original body. When the plaster hardened and the outer layers of volcanic ash were meticulously removed, the result was beyond all expectation. Three-dimensional figures, incredibly detailed, that captured the last seconds of life of the Pompeians. Not just the shape of the bodies, but also their expressions of profound pain, agony, and despair. We can see the outlines of clothing, the details of faces contorted by suffering, the final gestures of instinctive protection or fatalistic resignation. There are casts of families embracing in a last solace, of children huddled, of pets like dogs and horses overcome by terror, and of men futilely trying to protect their faces with their hands against the pyroclastic cloud. Each of these casts is more than an archaeological artifact. It is a silent and chilling testament to the tragedy, a mute scream frozen in time that echoes through the centuries, crossing millennia to tell us its story. They humanize the catastrophe in a way no ancient text or historical account ever could. They are not just objects of study. They are people. People who, in their final moments, were immortalized by the same natural force that destroyed them, transforming their tragedy into a form of immortality. These casts have become Pompeii's most poignant ambassadors, the voices of a past that stubbornly refuses to be forgotten, and which confront us with the intrinsic fragility of existence and the remarkable resilience of human life, even in the face of total annihilation. They remind us that history is not just made of great kings and battles, but also of the final moments of ordinary individuals who became extraordinary in their stillness. Behind the impressive numbers of dead and the cold statistics of one of antiquity's greatest natural catastrophes, there are stories, individual stories of loss, of interrupted love, of abyssal despair, and of desperate attempts at survival that, tragically, failed. The Plaster casts, with their brutal honesty and fidelity to the last moments, allow us to glimpse these final moments with a clarity and emotion that transcends time. There is, for example, the iconic and universally moving image of the woman embracing her child, an icon of maternal devotion that resonates through the millennia. The scene of a mother trying to protect her small child, perhaps a baby with her own body, in what would be a last, desperate embrace of unconditional love, is a poignant reminder of the fundamental human bond and the protective instinct in the face of impending catastrophe. Another image that remains etched in the memory of those who visit Pompeii is that of the embracing couple, two bodies intertwined in a last, desperate solace, an act of comfort and farewell as the pyroclastic cloud fatally enveloped them. They chose to face death together, a silent testament to the love and human connection that resisted until the last breath, until life was snatched from them. They are not just figures, but symbols of vulnerability and the strength of emotional bonds. There is also the cast of a guard dog, curled up in its collar, terrified, with its fur bristling from shock and dread, or that of a man with his mouth open in a silent scream of agony, his facial expression captured forever. Roman soldiers, caught off guard at their posts or in their barracks, were found still with their weapons, their armor, and their equipment, many in positions that suggest an attempt to protect themselves or to fight against what they could not face. Merchants and artisans, with their tools, their coins, or their most precious belongings beside them, bear witness to the futile attempt to save what was dearest to them, an attachment to possessions that proved useless in the face of Vesuvius's unstoppable force. Each of these casts is more than a petrified fragment of life. It is an echo of a real person, with their dreams, fears, affections, and routines. They show us the humanity behind the tragedy, reminding us that Pompeii was not just a destroyed city, but a home for thousands of individuals whose lives were cut short in an instant, without warning. Their stories, though silent, are told by the vestiges of their bodies, inviting us to a profound reflection on the transience of existence, the strength of love and despair, and the lasting impact of a day that forever changed the landscape and humanity's understanding of nature's fury. The eruption of Vesuvius was not a singular, homogeneous event, but a series of distinct phases, each more devastating and lethal than the last, culminating in almost total annihilation. After the initial hours of a relentless rain of ash and pumice that buried the city, came the most terrifying and deadly phase, the descent of the pyroclastic clouds. This was not a simple cloud of smoke. It was a superheated torrent of toxic gas, fine ash, and incandescent rocks that, like a fiery avalanche, swept down the volcano's slopes at incredible speeds, often exceeding 100 or even 200 kilometers per hour, wiping out everything in its path. Temperatures within these clouds could exceed 500 degrees Celsius, and in some places, reach a staggering 700 degrees Celsius, instantly incinerating anything organic. For the Pompeians who still remained in the city, hidden in their homes, in dark cellars, or attempting a desperate escape toward what they thought was safety, the arrival of this wave of death was the instantaneous and absolute end. The devastating force of the pyroclastic cloud left no chance of survival. The combination of extreme temperatures, the high velocity of the gas and debris mass, and the lack of oxygen meant that any life form exposed to it would be vaporized or its tissues carbonized in a matter of seconds before they could even feel pain or suffocation. Brains boiled, muscles violently contracted, and bodies stiffened instantly in the position they were in at the moment of impact. It was this series of pyroclastic clouds, occurring in several surges throughout the night and the following morning, that swept over Pompeii and Herculaneum, extinguishing life brutally and almost immediately, covering everything with a dense and incredibly hot layer of ash and volcanic mud that solidified rapidly, creating the protective shell that would preserve the city for nearly 2 millennia. The entire landscape was changed forever, transformed from a verdant paradise into a gray, silent desert, a somber testament to the relentless and incomprehensible force of nature, which in a moment of fury can erase entire civilizations as if they had never existed. Pompeii's end was not gradual. It was an abrupt, total, and overwhelming final stop, an event that would become a dark legend, a perpetual warning about the precariousness of human existence in the face of our own planet's geological power. And what survived? What did death preserve for the future? The tragedy that annihilated Pompeii, in one of history's greatest ironies, paradoxically transformed it into an unparalleled time capsule, an unexpected gift to archaeology and humanity. The dense and suffocating layer of ash and lapilli, which covered the city in a matter of hours, acted as an airtight and protective seal, preserving not only the monumental architecture, but an incalculable myriad of everyday objects, freezing them at the exact moment of the catastrophe. It is this extraordinary preservation that allows us today to touch, feel, and, in a way, smell Roman life like nowhere else on the planet. We can see kitchen utensils, bronze pots, bone spoons, ceramic bowls, wine jugs, still arranged on shop counters or dining tables, as if their owners had just stepped away for a brief break, about to return. Wooden furniture, though carbonized and fragile, left its exact shape imprinted in the solidified ash, revealing details of beds with their carved feet, elegant tables, benches, and even cupboards, allowing us to reconstruct the furnishings of Roman homes. Jewelry and personal adornments such as gold rings with precious stones, delicate earrings, bracelets, and necklaces were found in their places, some still on the victim's fingers or wrists, others carefully stored in wooden chests or jewelry boxes, which disintegrated but left the imprint of their contents. But perhaps the most impressive and moving are the organic objects, carbonized breads that miraculously retained their round shape and even the baker's marks, as if they had just come out of the oven, dried fruits like figs and dates, pomegranate seeds, and even eggs, all fossilized by the ash, offering a direct glimpse of the Pompeian diet. There is also an impressive quantity of ceramic and glass vessels, bronze and marble statues, and tools, which give us a detailed view of the professions and aesthetic tastes of the Pompeians. Each of these items is more than an inanimate artifact. It is a direct and tangible connection to the past, a minuscule detail that, combined with others, helps us reconstruct the complex and vibrant tapestry of Roman life. They are the silent whispers of a lost world, which upon being discovered and brought to light, transport us into the homes, shops, and lives of those who were caught in Vesuvius's overwhelming fury. This unique preservation is what makes Pompeii an unprecedented archaeological site, a place where time, in fact, stood still, so that we could learn. If the excavations of Pompeii revealed the physical and material structure of an ancient city, the wall inscriptions are its true voice, a direct, authentic, and incredibly human echo of the thoughts, feelings, desires, and even the most prosaic graffiti of the Pompeian people. Far from being mere formal records or official documents, these inscriptions, scribbled in charcoal, painted with red or black ink, or incised into plaster on the walls of houses, public buildings, and even tombs, connect us directly to their inhabitants in a way no formal text or historical account ever could. They are proof of literacy across different social strata and the desire to express ideas, opinions, and even one's own existence. There are messages of ardent love and desire that transcend time, such as, "To you, whom I love, may my heart find you in your pure body," or simpler declarations like, "I love someone who does not love me." There are provocations and direct insults, exhibiting the sarcastic, ironic, and at times vulgar vein of the populace. Obscene jokes, comments about local politicians, declarations of friendship, and even everyday frustrations like, "Caius hates being served by his slaves," or "Where did you go, my dear?" can be found, revealing a human, raw, and fascinating side of the Pompeians. The richness and diversity of this graffiti are impressive, but the inscriptions also played an important functional role in urban life. They were widely used for political announcements, soliciting votes for specific candidates for offices like Aedile and Duovir, with slogans that still sound familiar today. Advertisements for events, such as gladiatorial contests in the amphitheater or theatrical performances in the Grand Theater, were painted on walls in advance. There are records of debts, property sales, shop rentals, shopping lists, and even opening hours for establishments. They were the billboards, classifieds, and social media of ancient Pompeii, the most immediate form of public communication. These graffiti and inscriptions are a vibrant testament to urban life, popular culture, and the expressive capacity of an ancient society. They break the barrier of time, allowing us to hear the voices of the Pompeians, laugh at their jokes, feel their passions and frustrations, and understand a little more about how they lived, communicated, and interacted in their world. They are the voice of the people, an authentic window into the soul of a city that, even buried and silenced for centuries, refused to be forgotten, and which today speaks to us directly from its ashbed. For nearly 1,700 years, Pompeii remained a legend, a distant whisper, a mythical city swallowed by the earth, its existence almost forgotten in the dense mists of time and memory. The vast and relentless layer of ash and lapilli, which destroyed it in an instant, paradoxically also preserved it almost perfectly, keeping it untouched and sealed beneath the surface, like a time capsule guarded by a sleeping giant. The rediscovery of Pompeii, starting in the 18th century, marked one of the most exciting and transformative moments in the history of archaeology, reigniting a passion for antiquity and revolutionizing our understanding of the Roman Empire. Although sporadic excavations and accidental discoveries had occurred before, such as the discovery of parts of the city in 1599, when workers dug a canal, it was from 1748, under the aegis of the Bourbons, kings of Naples, that systematic and more organized excavations truly began, gradually revealing the astonishing magnitude of what lay hidden beneath the earth. The surprise and fascination were immense, and the news spread like wildfire across Europe. Artists, intellectuals, nobles, and adventurers flocked to witness this miracle. As the ash and volcanic debris were carefully removed, the city's structures emerged from underground with impressive clarity. Houses with missing roofs but intact walls and floors, majestic temples, elegantly constructed theaters, shops with their sales counters still visible. Everything seemed to be exactly as it was on the day of the eruption. The frescoes still shone on the walls with their original colors. The mosaics on the floor looked freshly laid. The furniture, though carbonized, was in its place, and everyday objects lay where their owners had left them, as if life had been suddenly frozen. It was as if a time machine had been activated, transporting the discoverers directly to the pulsating heart of Roman life. The world's curiosity was overwhelmingly awakened, and Pompeii quickly became a primary destination of interest for Enlightenment intellectuals, neoclassical artists seeking inspiration from antiquity, and wealthy travelers embarking on the grand tour. Archaeological methodology evolved considerably from the initial discoveries, culminating in Giuseppe Fiorelli's revolutionary plaster cast technique, which brought forth the most moving of revelations, the last expressions of life and pain of the victims. The fascination with Pompeii has not diminished over the centuries. Each new excavation and discovery reveals more about this city which, though dead, seems more alive and eloquent than many that still breathe today. Pompeii re-emerged, not to live again, but to teach us, to marvel us, and to remind us that history has its own ways of preserving memory. Despite centuries of meticulous excavations, in-depth studies, and the tireless dedication of generations of archaeologists and historians, Pompeii, like any great archaeological site, holds its own mysteries, questions that still intrigue the most renowned researchers and invite the boldest speculation. The exact date of the eruption itself, for instance, although traditionally accepted as August 24, 79 AD, has been the subject of intense debate and re-evaluation. Recent discoveries of autumn fruits, such as pomegranates and wine-ready grapes, as well as amphorae with already fermented wine, and the presence of electoral placards referring to a magistrate who took office after August, strongly suggest that the eruption may have occurred later in the year, perhaps in October or even November. This small, yet significant discrepancy continues to be rigorously investigated, challenging the established chronology and forcing a revision in how we understand the events of that day. Beyond the date, numerous enigmas about daily life persist. What were the true rituals of certain religious sects that operated secretly, such as the cult of Isis, or the mysterious Bacchic practices of the Villa of the Mysteries? What was the daily life of slaves like, many of whom left no direct records, their existences silenced by history? What happened to all those who tried to flee but whose bodies were never found? Did they truly manage to escape Vesuvius's fury, or were their remains pulverized and carried away by the wind? And perhaps the most profound and philosophical of all mysteries, how did the Pompeians, who lived under the imposing and active shadow of a volcano that had already demonstrated its power, truly feel about it? Did they believe in its divine power? Did they have premonitions about the approaching catastrophe? Or did they live in blissful ignorance, a collective denial, as most sources suggest, until the very last and fatal moment? There are still artifacts whose exact function is not fully understood. Buildings, not fully explored or containing inaccessible rooms, and enigmatic wall inscriptions awaiting decipherment, like coded messages from a distant time. Pompeii is an open book, but its deepest pages, those containing the most intimate secrets of that society, are still slowly being turned. And each new discovery brings not only answers, but also new and intriguing questions. The city invites us to continue speculating, to delve deeper into the shadows of the unknown, and to recognize that, even amidst so much revelation and historical transparency, the past will always guard its most intimate secrets, challenging us to continue the quest for knowledge and truth. Pompeii is far more than a mere collection of archaeological ruins. It is a legacy, an invaluable lesson etched in stone, ash, and the very remnants of life that continues to teach us profoundly and comprehensively about Roman civilization. Its almost perfect preservation, a miracle born of catastrophe, has granted us an unprecedented glimpse into a fully functioning Roman city, a vivid snapshot of daily life that we would scarcely have known in such detail from fragmented ancient texts alone. Thanks to Pompeii, we've learned about daily life in intimate detail, how people ate, the carbonized loaves in the ovens, worked, the tools in the workshops, entertained themselves, the amphitheaters and theaters, socialized, the public baths, and lived in their homes with their furniture, utensils, and artworks. The city revealed the complexity and diversity of Roman art, from the majestic and colorful frescoes and intricate mosaics adorning the most sumptuous villas, to the humblest and most spontaneous graffiti scribbled on walls, showcasing the vibrancy, irreverence, and variety of artistic expression of the era, often with impressive realism. Pompeii's architecture, with its well-planned houses centered around atria and peristyles, its imposing public buildings like the Forum and temples, and its ingenious water and sanitation system, has given us valuable and tangible insights into Roman engineering, urban planning, and construction practices. Local politics, religion with its temples and household altars, the pleasures of cuisine and leisure, and the challenges of life in an ancient society were revealed with impressive clarity, filling gaps that written documents could not. But Pompeii's legacy extends far beyond its material and architectural aspects. It teaches us, brutally and movingly, about the intrinsic fragility of human existence in the face of nature's uncontrollable and unpredictable forces. The city is a vivid reminder that, however grand our works, however secure and routine our lives may seem, we are always at the mercy of forces greater than ourselves. At the same time, Pompeii speaks to us about the invaluable importance of preserving our own cultural and historical heritage, for what was once a disaster and total annihilation is today an inexhaustible source of knowledge, inspiration, and connection with the generations that preceded us. Pompeii is, ultimately, a continuous reminder that the past, when well cared for and studied, has the extraordinary ability to enlighten us, to inspire us, and to offer us a deeper understanding of who we are as humanity and where we come from, an eternal testament to life that refused to be silenced by time and ash. Pompeii is, in its deepest essence, the living and palpable embodiment of the inseparable coexistence between beauty and tragedy, a unique place where cultural richness and the most devastating brutality of catastrophe meet in an eternal embrace, a vibrant contrast that makes it unique in the world. To walk its streets today, even with the crowds of tourists, is to experience this duality in a visceral and moving way. On one hand, we are confronted with the stunning beauty of a flourishing civilization at the peak of its splendor and prosperity. The vibrant frescoes, with their still intense colors, adorning the walls of domus and villas, appear to have been painted yesterday, depicting gods, heroes, and daily scenes with a mastery that transcends time. The intricate mosaics, carefully assembled with thousands of tiny tesserae, tell epic stories of gods and heroes, or depict scenes of wildlife and marine life with impressive detail. The grandeur of the temples, with their imposing columns, the theaters where drama and comedy met, the ingenious functionality of its urban planning, with paved streets and advanced water systems, all of this reflects a city that celebrated life, art, pleasure, intelligence, and prosperity. It was an irrefutable testament to the height of Roman power and sophistication, a society that mastered the art of living well. On the other hand, the tragedy of annihilation is undeniable, overwhelming, and deeply moving, hovering over every stone and every frame. The plaster casts, with their rawness and fidelity to the last moments of despair, are silent and agonizing testimonies, revealing the contorted forms of men, women, and children who were caught by surprise by the deadly fury. The carbonized loaves in the ovens, the kitchen utensils still on counters, and the personal objects lying where they were left, remind us of the sudden and violent interruption of all that life. From the simplest routine to the grandest feast, the same volcanic force that fertilized its lands, allowing agricultural wealth and prosperity, was the one that buried it in an instant, sealing its fate irrevocably. This intrinsic juxtaposition of life and death, of splendor and destruction, of creation and annihilation, is the immortal essence of Pompeii. It is a place where death, paradoxically, preserved life in details that would otherwise be impossible, where catastrophe transformed into a transparent window to the past, and where the beauty of human creation is eternally marked by the indelible scar of annihilation. A city that, in its own colossal tragedy, became a poignant monument to the resilience of historical memory and the complexity of the human condition, which, even in the face of the inevitable, tries to cling to life. Mount Vesuvius, the imposing and, for many, threatening mountain that dominated the horizon and determined Pompeii's fate, remains today a constant presence in the Bay of Naples landscape. Far from being an extinct or forever dormant volcano, it is, in fact, considered one of the world's most dangerous and monitored volcanoes, a latent threat that hangs over the lives of millions of people. Its danger stems not only from its active and unpredictable nature, but also from the dense population residing on its slopes and around the bay. Millions of people live in the so-called red zone of Vesuvius, including the bustling metropolis of Naples and dozens of surrounding towns and cities spread across Campania. What happened in 79 AD is not just a historical event. It is a constant and somber reminder of its destructive potential. Although Vesuvius is currently in a period of quiescence with no major eruption since 1944, monitoring of it is incessant and intense. Scientists worldwide relentlessly track its seismic activity, internal tremors, the emission of volcanic gases from the crater, variations in ground temperature, and minute ground deformations, searching for any sign, no matter how small, of a new awakening, which could come with the same fury that annihilated Pompeii. Mass evacuation plans for the region are regularly updated, tested, and practiced in the hope that, should the volcano erupt again, a repeat of the Pompeii tragedy can be avoided. This implies removing millions of people from their homes within hours, a monumental logistical challenge that reflects the seriousness of the threat. Life around Vesuvius is a paradox in itself. The same volcanic earth that made Campania so incredibly fertile and prosperous for agriculture, producing superior wines and fruits, is also the source of a constant and latent threat. Vesuvius is a silent and imposing guardian, a living reminder of nature's terrifying unpredictability, and a beacon pointing to the continuous need for respect, humility, and preparation in the face of the planet's indomitable forces. It witnessed Pompeii's glory and vibrant life, and its abrupt fall, and continues to observe the life that stubbornly flourishes in its shadows, carrying within it the potential to write a new and tragic chapter in the history of human catastrophe. Pompeii, more than a handful of archaeological ruins or a tourist site, is, in its deepest essence, a mirror of the human condition, a poignant and timeless reflection on the inherent fragility of our existence and the remarkable, almost indestructible, resilience of historical memory. As we contemplate the remains of this city, which was literally frozen in time, we are forced to confront the transience of our own lives, our constructions, and our empires. In the blink of an eye, a prosperous and vibrant civilization, with its ambitions, pleasures, daily dramas, political intrigues, and loves, was swept from the face of the earth by a force of nature that distinguishes neither kings from commoners, nor rich from poor. This reminds us brutally and undeniably that no matter how grand our architectural works, no matter how secure and predictable our daily routine may seem, we are always at the mercy of the greater forces of the universe, of nature, and of time. However, Pompeii also speaks to us with a silent but powerful voice about the surprising resilience of historical memory. Even after nearly 2 millennia of oblivion and being submerged beneath the ashes, the city re-emerged to tell its story with a clarity and detail that few other places in the world can offer. It rose from its ash bed to teach us about the past, to unveil the secrets of a civilization, and to connect us intimately and viscerally with those who lived before us. The silent voices of the plaster casts, the inscriptions left on the walls, the humblest objects preserved forever, all become eternal witnesses, ensuring that their lives were not in vain, that their suffering is not forgotten, and that their stories continue to be told. The city has become a powerful reminder that, even in the most absolute destruction, there can be a form of preservation, and that knowledge of the past is fundamental for our understanding of the present and for our ability to build a more conscious future. Pompeii is ultimately a lasting monument to the human capacity to create, to love, to suffer, and above all, to remember. It is a testament that even in the face of the most overwhelming catastrophe, history finds a way to manifest itself, to transcend death, and to continue its journey through time, echoing its lessons for future generations. A lesson in humility and admiration for the persistence of existence. The story of Pompeii is not merely a sequence of past events, it is a saga that engulfs us, terrifies us with its brutality, and makes us reflect deeply on the very nature of human existence and our relationship with the world around us. It is a powerful reminder that history is not just a collection of facts and dates in dusty books, but a complex and vibrant tangle of lives, dreams, conquests, and tragedies that shape the world we live in today. Every stone, every fresco, every plaster cast in Pompeii is a direct link to the past, a window to a time that was abruptly interrupted, but which continues to teach us. If this journey through time, this immersion into the life and death of Pompeii, has touched you in any way, if the saga of this lost and found city has awakened your curiosity, your emotion, or your thirst for more knowledge, I invite you to hit that like button on this video. Your interaction isn't just a number. It helps us boost this message, to spread these fascinating stories, ensuring that knowledge of the past continues to inspire, educate, and ignite a passion for history in more and more people around the world. Share this video with those who, like you, are passionate about mysteries, archaeological discoveries, and narratives that make us think about life and death. And to not miss any of our next historical explorations, to continue this journey through lost civilizations and ancient secrets, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell to receive all notifications of our upcoming releases. We want to build a community of time explorers, of history lovers who unite to uncover what the past has to tell us. Tell us in the comments. Your opinion is invaluable. What aspect of Pompeii's history impacted you the most? What did this colossal tragedy teach you about the fragility of life, the indomitable force of nature, or the persistence of memory? Your participation enriches our journey and helps us shape future content. May the story of Pompeii, the city that lived and died in the blink of an eye and was rediscovered to tell us its most intimate secrets, continue to echo in our consciousness, reminding us of life's beauty, the strength of human resilience, and the importance of valuing every moment.